Though parents are going to step up, the community's going to step up. They're fed up of all the talking. There has been a lot of talking. Tell us what, after your summit yesterday, you as the London Mayor are going to do.
Well, we need to have a relentless focus on preventing violent crime happening in the first place. We've got to tackle the root causes, but also we need targeted police work as well. And what yesterday's summit was about, Victoria, was, look, there's going to be differences between politicians from different parties. I will carry on lobbying for more investment in prevention, education and policing. But in the meantime, we've got to park all the differences and work together to try and grapple with the issues that your programme talked about on Monday. That means investing in young people, so Londoners have facilities for youth work, for prevention work, to do constructive things, but also realising we need police and neighbourhood policing as well to make sure people feel safe when they go about their business in London.
Does that mean that you're going to increase the amount of money that goes to policing in London? Because you control that budget.
So what happens, roughly speaking, 80% of the police budget comes from central government, 80%, and we've seen big cuts over the last 8 years. What I've done in my most recent budget is two things. One is I've raised the council tax precept, the maximum the government allows me to do so. That leads to £50 million, which we're giving to the police. But secondly, I'm using business rates, which has never been used before on policing. And so, broadly speaking, the police will now receive in the coming year £110 million. That protects 1,000 officers, but we've ring-fenced part of that £15 million towards the knife crime. That will lead to a specialised violent crime task force, 120 officers, doing things like targeted, intelligence-led stop and search, covert operations, weapon sweeps like taking place behind me, and other important work. But separately, Victoria, we've announced £45 million in my recent budget, and this money came from business rates as well, towards things for young people to do. They've seen massive cuts, youth centres closed down, after-school clubs lost, football facilities lost, and that money will be available to groups across London who can register now on the City Hall website.
Right. Do you feel any personal responsibility for what's been happening on the streets of London?
Yes, I'm the Mayor.
Go on.
Of course I do. When you meet bereaved families, I met a father and an uncle yesterday. When you meet the people you spoke to on Monday, I was in the youth centre that Tanisha would go to regularly last week, and her best friends were saying that youth centre was like a second home to many young people in that community, threatened with closure last year because of government cuts. The youth workers, to many of those young people, are like second parents. Those youth workers have been threatened with their jobs being lost because of government cuts. I can't replace all the funding lost, but I can do my bit. But I'm a Londoner, I'm a parent, and so of course I understand and I feel the pain Londoners feel. In the last 2 weeks, two teenagers, a 16-year-old and a 17-year-old, have lost their lives as a consequence of gun crime. And so of course I take it personally. I'm the Mayor of London. I'm incredibly proud of my city. I think we are the greatest city in the world, but it does anger Londoners, it shocks Londoners, as it should, that there are people dying unnecessarily.
I want to read you this text message from one of our viewers. They don't leave their name. I would like to ask Sadiq Khan the following. Are you okay leaving a legacy of death and violence and homelessness and theft like we haven't seen in decades?
Let me deal with that directly, Victoria. Since 2014, so 2 years before I became Mayor, knife crime began going up, not just in London, but across England and Wales since 2014. And by the way, in 39 of the 43 police forces, serious violent crime is going up. That's why I've been saying for some time now, these are national problems that demand national solutions. That's why I welcome Home Secretary coming to our summit yesterday, listening to council leaders, members of parliament and others expressing their concern about the changes they've seen in their communities over the last
But in the year, sorry to interrupt, in the year after you became Mayor, according to figures from the Met, robbery increased by 12%, gun crime went up by 42%, knife crime by 24%. That's in your first year.
We can swap figures. We can swap figures, but crime in London is going up less fast than crime across the country. It's a fact. Knife crime
it's still going
up,
up.
roughly speaking, the same in London. Well, knife crime in London is going up roughly the same as across the country. The point I'm making is, of course, I take responsibility for London, but knife crime is going up across the country. Crime is going up across the country. That's why I say to the government, these are national problems that require national solutions. That's why I don't apologise for arguing for more resources for policing, but also for prevention and education as well. And what's really important is, of course, we do what we can in London: prevention, education, enforcement, but realise you can't escape the fact that policing's lost 40% of its budget, youth work has lost 46% of its budget, and that has consequences. Don't just take my word for it, take the word of Home Office civil servants.
But you know, the last time knife and gun crime was this high, police numbers were also way higher. So it's obviously much more about a reduction in police numbers.
Well, hold on a sec. In 2007-8, when crime was very, very high, police numbers were going up, community support officers were going up, youth work investment was going up. The point I make is this: look, the responsibility for crime rests with the criminals. Let's not excuse criminality. No young person should think it's okay or cool to carry a knife, or no person should think it's good to join a criminal gang. We've got to give young people constructive things to do, but bear down on criminality. But even the Home Office say there is a link between police officers' numbers being cut and serious violent crime going up. What I'm saying is this: we need a relentless focus on preventing violent crime taking place in the first place. We've got to tackle the root causes, but also have targeted police work as well. Here in London, members of Parliament, council leaders, assembly members, myself, the Deputy Mayor, the Commissioner are working together, and I'm really pleased Home Secretary is working with us as well. There are things we can do together. She can knock heads together in relation.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
She can knock heads together. No, all I say, so for example, let me give you an example. The numbers of young people with mental health problems, heads can be knocked together to invest in mental health work. When it comes to schools, we can make sure schools are safe places for young people. Ofsted should be inspecting whether a school is making sure young people are resilient, so they don't accept a knife when it's offered by somebody in a gang. It's really important that the Home Secretary, she's promised to do this, but knocks government heads together so we work together to prevent young people carrying knives in the first place.
But you keep repeating that you're going to work together. As you know, as Home Secretary, Amber Rudd flatly rejects that there is a link between a reduction in police numbers and this upsurge in violent crime. And you say you can't ignore that. I mean,
well, look, she can't have both ways. Her own officials.
No, I know. We reported on that on Monday. I know, and she still rejects it. What I'm asking you is, how can you work together when you have such a fundamental difference?
Well, what I've said to Amber Rudd is there are some things we're going to disagree about. Let's park those for the time being, but let's work together on things that we agree with. If she agrees, we're going to work in relation to prevention work. And I'm really pleased that she's going to lead this task force. And it needs government leadership. In Scotland, what happened was the Scottish government of both, firstly the Labour Party and the Scottish National Party worked together. That's really important. But they led the work taking place. They brought together mental health, health, social services, youth work, policing, housing, to make sure they work together. Part of the advantage of working together, Victoria, is you can pool your resources. So rather than working in silos, you can pool your resources, and that means you can get more for your money. So that's really important in relation to local authorities, me the Mayor, but central government as well. But also you can invest in prevention. I'll give you one example in relation to youth work. In the last 8 years, 12,700 fewer youth places for young people in London. By working together in investing in youth facilities, we can make sure young people have good things to do. That means Amber, as the head of the task force, saying to the Department for Education, actually it's worth investing in young people. It means Amber Rudd saying to DCMS, Culture, Media and Sport, you should be saying to social media companies, it's not okay for videos to be available on YouTube glorifying violence, for gang members to be taunting other gang members in a place where a stabbing took place, which leads to reprisals. I've been less effective, but maybe the government can be more effective saying to social media companies, pull down these YouTube videos. That's teamwork between me, the Mayor, and central government, and we've got to work together.
Do you know people yourself who've ended up in gangs?
Yes.
And what's happened to them?
Well, I'm 47 years old, so I'm a lot older now. But when I was younger, many of my friends at school were involved in gangs. I was lucky. I went to youth centre, so I got involved in boxing. I had big brothers. I had role models at home, and I didn't go down that path. Unfortunately, some of the people I went to school with, didn't fulfil their potential. They got involved in criminality. They got involved in other issues. I remember as a member of Parliament going to visit my local prison, Wandsworth Prison, and bumping into an old schoolmate in prison. He was on the other side of the cage to I was. Look, there are a number of factors why young people get involved in criminality. A sense of belonging, joining a gang. If you haven't got role models, if nobody puts an arm around you and gives you aspiration and hope, if you've not seen a pathway to get a job, and somebody comes along to you and says, you know what, you can get rich quick, you can have the best trainers, you can have a cool car by taking this pathway, taking this shortcut. I'm not excusing criminality, but you can understand why somebody takes that shortcut. That's why I say, look, we've got to make sure we invest in prevention, we invest in education before we get to the enforcement part, which unfortunately the police still have to do.
You said emphatically at the beginning you do take personal responsibility for this. Is it something that you're losing sleep over at the moment?
No, of course it causes me concern at night time. I lose sleep over security all the time. We face a number of threats. Terrorism is a big threat. The threat levels still are severe. When you hear about young people losing their lives because of knife crime or gun crime, it causes me concern. I went to a funeral very few weeks after I became mayor of somebody who lost their life a stone's throw from my home. I'm the parent of two teenagers. Of course, it's personal for obvious reasons. The council estate I grew up in, I still visit regularly, but for the grace of God, I could have embarked on a different pathway. One of the reasons why I campaigned to become the mayor of London was because this city gave me and my family the opportunity to fulfill our potential. From a humble background, I went on to become a lawyer, a member of Parliament, and now the mayor. I want to make sure other Londoners have their potential fulfilled as well, not enter a pathway of crime, criminality, or even worse, be the victims of crime and end up losing their lives.
Thank you very much for talking to us this morning. We appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
We will make America great again.